Hello and welcome to my channel, I Went to Lose Gaming. After an incredibly tumultuous journey of being scorned and ridiculed by the community to the point that miHoYo buffed him into the monster that he is today, the CEO of GEO is finally coming back in patch 1.5. As such, I figured I'd provide an updated guide on him, and I'll also be including the new artifacts, and I want to present to you Zhongli owners or Zhongli hopefuls the best 3 builds that I think Zhongli has. The 3 builds I'll be presenting are ordered in the amount of investment required to use him with said build, starting with the most free-to-play friendly build, which is the pure HP shield support build. The second build I will be demonstrating is his physical DPS Bruiser build. If you like the tank and spank playstyle and need a main DPS, then this build might be the one for you. This build is also free to play achievable with a bit of luck and a lot of farming. And finally, the third build I'll be demonstrating is a no holds barred maximum geo damage sub DPS burst build. This last build is arguably the least free to play friendly, at least for achieving the maximum theoretical meteoric pain in comparison to the previous 2 builds. Starting off with the most free to play friendly build, the shield support build. The idea of this build is simple: have a beefy shield and ignore most enemy damage and mechanics. Back before Zhongli was buffed, I was an advocate for this build and found him to be incredibly useful just for this alone. After all the buffs, Zhongli is literally an easy mode button with this build. Just press and hold E and everything is easier. If you already have a main DPS character and would like to negate 90% of enemy attacks and mechanics, then this is the build for you. Did I mention that this build requires, comparatively speaking, very little investment, and your artifacts and weapons barely matter? Starting off with some quick math, let's say you level Zhongli up to level 80 and slap on some level 16 HP percent main stat 5-star artifacts with a level 40 black tassel. This will put you around 30,000 HP. For this build, I highly recommend leveling up his elemental skill to beef up his shield, and I would target leveling it up to level 9 or at least level 8. At level 9, and with the aforementioned 2 artifacts putting you at around 30,000 HP, this puts his shield at an already impressive 13,500 hit points. But with the upcoming 1.5 patch, the tenacity of the Millilith artifact set will be released, and the 2-piece set bonus provides 20% HP, while the 4-piece set bonus strengthens the shield for the entire party and provides a 20% attack buff every time your elemental skill, who has this set equipped, does damage. Just farm literally any doo-doo HP percent artifacts for him, level them up to 16, and you can have a roughly 18,700 HP shield. To put this into perspective, most DPS characters, even melee ones, have about 18,000 HP, so you're literally doubling their HP just by pressing and holding E with Zhongli's shield. Other artifact sets to consider are the 4-piece Noblesse Oblige and the 4-piece Archaic Petra, but in my opinion the clear winner, once 1.5 rolls around, will be the 4-piece Millilith, thanks to the 20% attack boost as well as increasing your shield's durability by over 30%. To demonstrate just how effective this shield is, I'll be running a shield support Zhongli that basically does no damage in Abyss 12. He will only have 2 artifacts equipped, which brings my Zhongli's HP to 30,188, and since my Zhongli's skill is at level 12, this puts his shield at 16,322 HP, which is still lower than the 18,700 HP that I suggested earlier. He will be supporting my main DPS Chi-Chi. The first thing you'll notice is that this changes the game completely. Instead of focusing on dodging and doing damage, all I have to focus on is doing damage with Chi-Chi. Zhongli's shield is literally allowing me to mostly ignore one of the most important parts of Abyss 12, which is staying alive. These are level 95 Geo Vishaps, and they are struggling to punch through my 16,800 HP shield. Normally these guys will kill a character very quickly. Now imagine if instead I had the free-to-play build from earlier and had an even beefier shield as well as another 20% attack thanks to the 4-piece set bonus. On top of this, Zhongli is amplifying Chi-Chi's damage for free with his resistance shred. So in case you guys weren't aware, Zhongli's shield actually applies negative 20% resistance to enemies just basically near him. So pretty much any enemy near him loses 20% resistance, and that amplifies a lot of damage by quite a bit. Now 12.2 is basically the same thing as 12.1, where now I can mostly focus on just doing damage. Admittingly, if I stand in the Lightning Sassin Mage's thunderstorms, those would easily punch through Zhongli's shield since they do a ton of damage. So it is worth noting that you are not completely invincible with Zhongli's shield. Again though, just remember to recast it every once in a while and then just DPS away. 12.3 is where Zhongli's shield is even more evident. It's literally allowing Chi-Chi to stand in the Geo Shockwaves made by the robot. These Geo Shockwaves will shred through most characters normally, but with Zhongli's shield this mechanic becomes almost entirely ignorable. Now you can't eat every single hit from these robots because they actually do a lot of damage, but compared to how I would have to play normally by dodging like my life depended on it, because it actually does, I can just focus on slapping these robots with Chi-Chi's small damage numbers until they eventually go back to the scrap heap. This shield support build works for practically any main DPS, whether it's Ganyu, Razor, Diluc, or even Chi-Chi in this case, it just doesn't matter. Zhongli's shield is such a universally good asset to have for literally any situation. For those older gamers like myself who used to use the power overwhelming cheat in StarCraft 1, Zhongli is like that for Genshin Impact. The second build that I will be highlighting is Zhongli's physical damage build. The most important thing about this build is just how freaking cool his spear kick looks. For this demonstration, Zhongli has a Refinement 4 Crescent Pike and an above average set of artifacts. He is running the 2-piece Gladiators and 2-piece Bloodstained Chivalry. After 1.5 comes around, I recommend the 4-piece Pale Flame for Zhongli. Or, alternatively, any combination of Bloodstained, Pale Flame, and Gladiators are all great for this build as well, and you should probably choose the ones with the best substats for him. This is a build where you will want to invest a lot into his artifact as well as pushing his weapon up to level 90. Fortunately, with some good luck and a lot of patience, anyone can get a highly refined Crescent Pike and decent artifacts, but you are shackled to the RNG of prototype spears dropping. For talents, prioritize leveling his basic attack to 8 or 9, followed by his shield and then his burst. For this specific showcase, his teammates include a Constellation 2 Rosaria, who has a crit rate focused Favonius Lance Noblesse Oblige build for superconduct support, as well as a Fischl with a level 1 1-star bow, so she doesn't do very much damage and she doesn't steal the show from Zhongli. Kaya is a great replacement for Rosaria, and Beidou or Lisa are both reasonable replacements for Fischl. Traveler is here for the 10% additional crit rate from her burst, as well as for Geo Resonance for the increased shield as well as additional damage. Now, when is it good to consider this build? If you need another main DPS and have many spear prototypes or a highly refined Crescent Pike available, this is an amazing build for you. On top of this, both the new 1.5 artifacts will benefit physical DPS Zhongli tremendously. I already made a video on why that's the case, so feel free to check it out in the card in the top right or in the link in the description below. Anyway, as we can see in this Abyss 12 run, Zhongli is having no trouble dealing with these Geo Vishaps despite their increased physical resistance. As for weapons, with this build both the Staff of Homa and the Crescent Pike are great options for this, with the Crescent Pike being far more free to play friendly and thus also what I recommend. Here in 12.3, you can see that Zhongli is ripping through these rune guards despite their massive 70% resistance to physical damage. Thanks to Superconduct removing 40% physical resistance and Zhongli's shield removing another 20%, these rune guards end up with only 10% physical resistance. Another great thing about this build is that it is not dependent on Zhongli's constellation. Zhongli's constellations only provide a small benefit overall to this build, because most of his damage output comes from his basic attack as well as from Crescent Pike's proc, so Zhongli is able to perform close to his maximum potential even at Constellation 0. However, it is worth noting that physical carry Zhongli's damage output isn't nearly as good as top tier carries like Ganyu or Hu Tao, but considering his Unga Bunga playstyle, as well as just how free to play friendly it is and how accessible it is, it's still an extremely powerful and effective build and can face roll pretty much everything in the game. And finally, for the last build. This build is what I believe to be his overall best build. It's just, unfortunately, by far the least free to play friendly. As you progress in Genshin Impact and your characters do more and more damage, damage mitigation and healing become less necessary. However, unlike healers like Barbara or Chi-Chi, Zhongli can still do quite a bit of damage himself. Allow me to show you the insane power of this build. Zhongli and Traveler were able to clear 12-3-1 in 6 seconds with this build. With minimal setup and no elemental reaction, Zhongli did well over 300,000 damage. There are many speedruns out there that utilize Zhongli's meteor damage to achieve impressive time. Here it is being utilized in 12-3-2 to support Hu Tao. Here it is clearing the Noblesse Oblige dungeon in 1 second. Anyway, this build is for doing hundreds of thousands of damage by calling down a meteor from the heavens, all with the simple press of the Q key. In a way, this can also be viewed as the natural progression of the first build, the shield support build. Again, this build is the least free-to-play friendly build to reach peak potential, especially compared to the previous two builds. A lot of this build's damage and utility is locked behind his constellations 2, 4, and 5, as well as being locked behind 5-star weapon refinement. Speaking of which, the best weapon for his meteor damage is by far currently the Staff of Homa, followed by the Primordial Jadewing Spear with a bunch of stacks and the Vortex Vanquisher with a bunch of stacks, all of which are not commonly seen as free-to-play friendly weapons. But to put this into perspective, a Refinement 5 Staff of Homa does around 40% more damage when compared to a Refinement 1 Primordial Jadewing Spear. So the difference between whale damage and even a lucky free-to-play player who may happen to have the Primordial Jadewing Spear is staggering, because 40% is a lot of damage. Nonetheless, this is still a perfectly viable build for free-to-play players to work towards, and even without his best weapon options, you will still be able to have very admirable meteor numbers. For free-to-play or low-budget players, I recommend the Black Cliff Pole or the Deathmatch. The Lithic Spear is a fine choice as well if you happen to have it, and the Skyward Spine and even the Favonius Lance are perfectly usable if you want some additional energy regen. Overall, I recommend using the 2-piece Archaic Petra and the 2-piece Noblesse Oblige to maximize his meteor damage. This setup can also be used for some fun AFK damage builds by relying on his stone seals resonating with other geostructures for a formidable amount of AFK DPS. And for those curious, the Millilith 4-piece with his attack buff up does roughly 92% or so of the amount of damage that a Noblesse 2-piece plus Archaic Petra 2-piece would do. And depending on your playstyle, the massive shield bonus that it provides might be worth considering running the Millilith 4-piece over the Noblesse 2-piece plus Archaic Petra 2-piece. Zhongli has been one of my favorite characters and by far my favorite husbando since Genshin Impact's release, and I have used him extensively with all 3 of these builds. His free-to-play shield build was how I started with him and how I also first 9-starred Abyss 12 way back in the day. Then I gradually built him for geo damage, which quickly led me to falling in love with his meteors harder than them falling onto his enemy. Recently I built him as a physical DPS carry, which I now use often for a fun change of pace and to also have an excuse to spam his spear kicking animation. So what do you guys think about these 3 builds for Zhongli? How do you plan to build your Zhongli? Are there any builds that I missed that you feel like are amazing builds for him? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Went to Lose, signing out.